Today we're doing a deep dive into a really critical topic,
Yeah.
the financial landscape and, well, the significant challenges faced by women in India.
Especially those in smaller towns and homemakers.
Exactly. We've got quite a stack of sources here, articles, research reports, different surveys, and they seem to paint a picture that's, pretty clear, also, frankly, quite concerning.
It is fascinating how multiple reports, looking at it from different angles, they all seem to converge on a very specific core problem.
Which is?
Well, a widespread deficit in financial knowledge, independent financial decision-making, and critically planning for the future. We see this pattern across many Indian women.
Right. So our mission today is really to go through these sources together, pull out the most important nuggets of insight, and try to understand the root causes and I guess the implications of this independence deficit.
Yeah, because the sources really highlight that a huge number of women, especially homemakers who maybe aren't earning a regular income themselves,
Right.
they often lack that fundamental financial literacy and the independence they need, particularly when it comes to securing their own, later years.
And as these reports really underscore, that situation, it just lays the groundwork for a significant level of vulnerability, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning then. What do the sources tell us about the foundation of this problem, like basic literacy and maybe workforce trends?
Well, one of the most consistent findings really across the board here is the strikingly low level of financial literacy among Indian women.
Okay, so how low are we talking? Like, do basic concepts like interest or inflation land?
That's a great question. The Global Financial Literacy Survey, the S&P one from 2023, gives us a baseline. It found only about 33% of Indian women are considered financially literate.
Wow, only 1 in 3. That's quite low.
It is just a basic understanding of financial ideas for only a third of women.
And I imagine, based on these sources, that picture gets, well, significantly bleaker when you look outside the major cities.
It does, yeah. The NABARD Financial Inclusion Survey from 2022, which really digs into rural areas, it reveals that less than 25% of women there understand basic concepts.
Like calculating interest on a loan, maybe, or how inflation affects their savings.
Exactly, those kinds of things. And you think about it, trying to manage household finances or even begin to plan for the future without grasping those fundamentals, it's incredibly difficult.
It really is. And does this connect to the broader economic picture, like women in the workforce? The sources mention that too, right?
Absolutely. There's another contributing factor highlighted. The Periodic Labor Force Survey, the PLFS data from 2024, it puts the female labor force participation rate, that's women working or actively looking for work, at under 25%.
Under a quarter. So less than 1 in 4 women in India are part of the official workforce. What does that mean then for financial planning for the vast majority who aren't?
Well, it means a really significant percentage of women are primarily homemakers. They might not have that consistent, independent income stream coming in through a formal job.
All right, so no regular salary, maybe no automatic pension building up.
Precisely. They aren't accumulating assets directly through employment in the same way. And yet, paradoxically, this situation makes financial planning maybe even more crucial for them.
Because they need other ways to build that security.
Exactly. They need alternative ways to build security for their own future, independent of a formal job structure.
Okay, this next part, honestly, is where the picture gets really sobering.
Yeah.
The sources seem to dedicate quite a bit of attention here. Let's talk about retirement planning.
Or maybe the alarming lack of it, as detailed in these reports.
Yeah.
This statistic is probably the most critical, the most urgent one we found across the sources. The HSBC India study, Women in Retirement, from 2023.
I saw that one, yeah.
It had a finding that it stops you in your tracks.
Right.
A staggering 81% of the Indian women they surveyed reported having absolutely no retirement plan. No savings specifically set aside for their old age.
81%. That's overwhelming. It basically means the whole idea of actively saving or planning for your own financial needs later in life, it's just not happening for huge numbers of women.
It seems not. And related to that, the same HSBC study found something else quite telling.
What's that?
A significant chunk, 68% of women, indicated they believe their spouse or their children will take care of them financially in their old age.
Ah, okay. So there's a strong reliance kind of baked into their expectations.
Exactly, a reliance on family. But as the sources are very quick to point out, while this belief is common, it carries substantial risk.
Especially when you factor in the demographics.
Precisely. We need to look at the demographic realities mentioned. Indian women's life expectancy, it's currently around 71.8 years. That's notably higher than men's, which is about 68.4 years.
Okay, so women, on average, live longer than men, often longer than their husbands.
Correct. And that's the crucial point. A woman is statistically likely to outlive the very person she might be depending on financially.
So if she doesn't have her own savings, her own plan for those extra years.
She's left in a highly precarious position after her spouse is gone. This combination, the anticipated reliance on family plus the actual demographic trend, it creates this profound documented vulnerability.
That vulnerability feels deeply connected to something else the sources talk about quite a bit, what they call a dependence mindset.
Yes.
This isn't just about not earning, is it? It seems more ingrained, like a way of thinking, influenced by society.
Yes, exactly. It's identified as a key psychological and social driver across these different reports. There was a survey by Sewa Bharat. They work with women in the informal sector.
Right.
They found that 72% of low-income and middle-class women felt they needed to, quote, ask permission from a male family member before making any significant financial decisions.
72% need permission. That statistic really speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just about managing the money, it's lacking the basic autonomy to decide how it's used.
Absolutely. And the dependence, it extends to the practical side, too, the actual handling of money.
How so?
The All India Survey on Financial Inclusion of Women from 2022, it states that 59% of women depend on their husband or maybe their son simply to handle basic banking tasks or manage any investments they might technically have.
So nearly 60% rely on men for bank visits, things like that.
Yeah. It might look like functional delegation sometimes, but the sources suggest it often stems from a lack of confidence or maybe lack of access or just not understanding the process themselves.
Which ties right into the social barriers these reports keep mentioning.
Exactly. Those cultural beliefs, like money matters are inherently for men, seem deeply ingrained.
And you hear phrases repeated, right? Things women might say or believe themselves.
Definitely. Things like, oh, retirement planning, that's something men do. Or the one we already mentioned, my family will just take care of me. It's a common refrain.
And these sources seem pretty emphatic that relying only on family care, while maybe rooted in cultural norms, is just inherently risky today.
Absolutely. They point out, families aren't always stable economic units. Circumstances change. Relationships face strain.
Unexpected things happen.
Right. And fundamentally, as these sources underline again and again, being financially dependent on others, no matter how well-meaning they are, it inherently equals vulnerability. If that support system falters for whatever reason,
You're exposed.
you're exposed. The reports also mention things like low digital literacy among women and, importantly, a general lack of trust in formal financial institutions. These are additional factors pushing them towards relying on male family members to navigate the financial world.
It sounds like a real web of factors keeping them from engaging directly.
It really is. It's this complex interlocking system. Low literacy, maybe limited direct income, almost non-existent personal future planning, this deep-seated dependence mindset reinforced by social norms, and then practical hurdles like digital access and trust.
Okay, but surely there are government safety nets or support systems intended to help. The sources do mention schemes aimed at financial inclusion for women, don't they?
They do, yes. The government has introduced schemes, and some have achieved, pretty impressive initial reach.
Like which ones?
Well, take the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. That's the scheme focused on basic bank account access. According to Ministry of Finance data cited here, as of 2024, it resulted in 23.76 crore women account holders.
Wow, 23.76 crore. That's over 230 million women with accounts. That sounds like a huge success in bringing women into the formal banking system.
It is a massive number. Definitely a success in terms of initial access.
There's a but. Does having an account automatically mean active financial planning or saving or using those accounts for long-term security?
That's the crucial nuance these sources really highlight. Access is increasing, yes, but engagement with the deeper financial planning tools, even through these accounts, seems to remain low.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Look at schemes specifically designed for long-term security. The Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, that's the savings scheme for a girl child's education and marriage. It's a great scheme, really.
Yeah.
But the data suggests it's only being utilized by about 25% of eligible households. There's a big gap between it being available and people actually signing up and using it.
Only a quarter using it. Okay. And what about schemes focused on the woman's own old age, her own security?
Well, there's the Atpol Pension Yojana. It's a valuable government-backed pension scheme designed exactly to provide income in old age. But according to PFRDA data from 2023, only about 19% of its enrolled subscribers are women.
Only 19% women in a key pension scheme.
Yeah. These statistics, pulled from the sources, they really underscore a critical point. Despite the potential benefits these schemes offer, despite government efforts to create them, awareness, understanding, and crucially, the active use of these specific long-term planning schemes remains very low.
Particularly among the women who arguably need them the most.
Precisely. It's not just about having access to an account. It's about actually using the tools within that system for future security.
Okay, let's try and synthesize all of this now. Let's pull it together to get that full interconnected picture the sources are presenting.
Okay, so we've got low fundamental financial literacy, especially stark in rural areas. That's combined with the reality that a huge percentage of women are homemakers, without their own independent earned income.
Right.
Then you layer on top of that the absolutely shocking finding that over 80% have no personal retirement plan. Instead, they're relying on this expectation of family care.
Despite the demographic fact that they're likely to outlive their husbands.
Exactly. And then add this pervasive dependence mindset, where asking permission for financial decisions, relying on male relatives for basic tasks is just the norm.
Reinforced by those deep-seated social beliefs, money is a man's domain, retirement is for men, etc.
And finally, you factor in the clear data showing that even the government schemes that could provide a safety net, that could offer planning tools, they're being significantly underutilized. Yeah, when you put it all together like that, it paints a very consistent picture across these diverse sources. A really massive segment of the population, Indian women, especially homemakers, especially those in smaller towns, are, as the sources clearly describe it, systematically unprepared financially.
Unprepared for their own future, particularly their old age.
Precisely.
They lack independent savings built for themselves. They lack personal retirement plans. They often lack the trust or maybe just the fundamental understanding of the financial tools available.
And even when help exists, like these schemes, they aren't fully utilizing that potential help. And it all seems profoundly worsened or maybe driven by this deeply ingrained cultural and psychological dependence.
It really does.
So the conclusion drawn across these sources, it isn't just diagnosing the problem. It feels like a clear and pretty urgent call to action. Meaning there's a massive documented need for solutions that go way beyond just opening a bank account. Solutions are needed that actively tackle the awareness gaps, that work towards shifting these deep-seated mindsets away from automatic dependence.
And provide tools.
Yes, and provide simple, trustworthy tools and education that are genuinely accessible and actually lead to long-term financial empowerment, real personal security.
This deep dive, it really lays bare the scale of the financial vulnerability so many Indian women face. It illuminates the really complex, deep-seated reasons behind it. And it highlights that significant gap between potentially helpful systems existing and their actual impactful use on the ground.
Yeah, understanding these specific dynamics drawn straight from this research stack, it feels absolutely crucial for anyone looking at financial inclusion or women's empowerment or even just social development in India today.
It definitely moves the conversation from just broad issues to the sort of granular realities that impact daily life and critically future security. And that brings us, I think, to a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. This is drawn right from the core challenge identified in all this material we've discussed.
Okay.
If, as these sources strongly suggest, relying solely on others for your financial future inevitably creates vulnerability, what does true financial independence really mean for these women? Is it just about having money in your own name? Or is it something deeper? Is it fundamentally about having the agency, the knowledge, and the tools to actually take control of your own future security, your own destiny?
Something powerful to think about, definitely, as you process everything we've covered today.